In Mariupol, there is a prevailing mood. Disbelief at life's new lows. While the still living pick through the landscape of their past like ghosts.
Пожалуйста, люди добрые, у нас нет электричества, у нас ничего есть, у нас нет ничего, медикаментов, ничего нет. Что мне теперь с домом моим?
It's astonishing how quickly war creates a grotesque new normal, without power or heat, or running water and sanitation for days, where a single generator can cause a scrum of cell phones and lifelines to the outside world, and where a lone body can lie uncollected on the side of an empty road. There is no evacuation from Mariupol because 4 consecutive attempts have been thwarted by the Russians.
Окраины города лупят, все заминировано. Пока весь на сегодняшний день, на сегодняшнюю минуту не удалось провести переговоры, чтобы это было безопасно для мирных граждан.
Desperation is beginning to rule. Looting in one of the local supermarkets.
Мяч сейчас играть. Зачем вы это все воруете?
Frayed tempers.
Зачем ты вообще зашел?
The fact of being trapped is turning people against each other. And this is where the chain of despair might begin, with a Russian attack helicopter preparing to swarm the night. At the firing end, all wars are reduced to video games now. They said this was a strike against a Ukrainian air defense system. But at the receiving end, one strike causes the destruction of an earthquake. This was a residential neighborhood in Sumy in the northeast. Now this is the site of an archaeological dig for traces of life. Again, we don't know why this place had to be leveled, why she had to suffer. But 21 civilians lost their lives here. Daylight gives a fuller picture under a discreet dusting of snow. A few hours later, a long line of buses for the evacuation of Sumy. That includes 1,000 of the many foreign students who've been studying here. But think of the grotesque irony. Flatten an area and then graciously permit its evacuation. It's like saying, if the Ukrainians won't greet us with open arms, let's destroy their homes and send them packing. In Kharkiv, the Russian airstrikes have created whole neighborhoods of show homes of horror. Glimpses of lives interrupted. And then there's the hospital, where the wounded cling to life, bearing the grisly cosmetics of war.
Понимаете, как всех пациентов, которые поступают и могут ходить, конечно, все хотят домой к своим родным и близким. Вот. А те, кто не могут идти, те, конечно, остаются здесь. Мы, к сожалению, таких почетов не ведем просто. Понимаете? Когда больше, когда меньше. Так что...
Back in Mariupol, it'll soon be bedtime in the bunker. Life goes underground every night. Otherwise, life is in too much danger. Here, despair, hope, and rage, all vying for space.
Что не плачь? Домой хочется, на работу хочется. Город жалко, людей жалко, детей жалко.
Еще маленький.
She speaks for just about everyone in Ukraine. But only one man can answer her, and he's not listening. Well, the human rights officer said that it appears that there could be hundreds of unreported civilian casualties in besieged cities like Mariupol. Earlier, I spoke to the city's deputy mayor, Sergei Orlov, and I began by asking him for an update on the situation in his city.
So today was our 4th attempt of evacuation. 3 previous will not succeed because of not established ceasefire and not established safety route. We were ready to evacuate our people from Mariupol by buses, but unfortunately we didn't receive ceasefire in Mariupol.
So just to be clear, Sergei, today no one got evacuated.
Today no one got evacuated, and we didn't receive possibility to move humanitarian food and so on from Zaporizhia to Mariupol.
What about these reports of Russian mines on the evacuation route? Is that true? Can you confirm that?
Yes, yes, it's true. We took guys who can undermine or remove these mines, but we did not reach that territory. We faced with blocked bridge.
And tell us about the general situation in Mariupol. How much destruction is there? How many people will want to stay behind in the city? What's the future for Mariupol?
The general situation of Mariupol is awful. I mean, from humanitarian side, we received information that hospital number 9 in Mariupol was totally destroyed, and there is no possibility to work at this hospital. So it does not exist anymore, this hospital. A lot of death, unfortunately. We cannot calculate how many people were killed in Mariupol. Yesterday was the first day when we it was needed to make some mass grave, and 33 bodies we should put this to mass grave.
Do you think the idea of the Russians here is to basically destroy these cities and then empty them out so that there are no people left in them?
I think the idea was to take the city, of course, with citizens, but when they see that it's not possible, Ukrainian army defeats the city, so the idea is to win anyway, and they do not choose any target. So is it hospital, school, kindergartens, living building? So they destroy everything and flatten Mariupol. We know that one district of Mariupol, I mean Levoberezhny district, is look like Aleppo at the moment. So continuous shelling flatten our city and killing Ukrainians in their beds, in their houses, on the streets. So it's we absolutely sure that we're faced with genocide and war crimes in Mariupol. They destroy all electricity supply, water supply, heating supply. Yesterday they destroyed the last supply of natural gas, and there is no any utility in Mariupol. So people are not able to receive water, to prepare food. They are collecting woods and use fire to prepare cooking. And today was the day with snow, so people were happy to collect snow and to melt it to water. So as you see, Russia provides genocide of Ukraine as a nation and Mariupol citizen.
I mean, it's amazing to think that just 2 weeks ago, Mariupol was, was a normal city, people living their lives, and now it's come to this.
Mariupol was a peaceful city with very good citizens, with the idea to be like European city, most transparent in Ukraine. We did not look for war, so we see terrible war crimes here in Mariupol, and they are happening hour by hour, minute by minute, second by second. Today, unfortunately, one child was killed in bombing. It's a girl, 6 years old. She unfortunately is dead because of no access to water.
Sergei Orlov, thank you very much indeed. I wish you all the best. Well, some of the fiercest fighting is now in the south of the country as Russian forces try to gain strategic control of the entire Black Sea coastline. They occupy the city of Kherson and surrounding Mariupol. Ukrainian forces remain in control of the port city of Mykolaiv, but it is coming under very heavy bombardment. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, is there. Lindsay.
Matt, the great fear here, of course, is becoming like Mariupol, surrounded and with everything cut off, or like Kherson, which has been occupied by the Russians. I spent some time today with the governor here, Vitaly Kim. Now, he's a young and rather dynamic character who seems to have taken on his new role as a wartime leader with some alacrity. He told me that the airport here was attacked by the Russians twice yesterday, but Ukrainian forces managed to repel them. But he says he knows they'll be back. Why did they not attack again last night? He said, well, they were sleeping. But he knows that's not the end of it. There are at least 2 tactical battalion groups in this area and more in the wider area. What he did tonight was he put out a request for everybody who's got tyres to bring them into the town so they can pile them up at every corner and set fire to them. So to reduce the visibility of the Russians, whether from the air or on the ground, when they do decide to strike. Now, today we went around the town. He allowed us to go and visit various places with the protection of some soldiers. And what really struck me as I moved around was just the fact that the people here are in a state of shock. They were sleeping when artillery hit the barracks in the early hours yesterday. Ukrainian soldiers exhausted from 12 days of fighting. Some are still missing. Maybe they weren't there. Or maybe their comrades will find more bodies in the wreckage. At least 8 Ukrainian soldiers were killed here in this attack. The Ukrainians say that they've pushed the Russians back, that the Russians just don't have the supplies, their logistics aren't working. But of course, another artillery attack could come in at any time. There'll surely be another bombardment, and another. But in Mykolaiv, the military and civilian leadership says time is on the side of Ukraine. How long can this go on?
From one day to eternity. So we do not know how it will be, only God knows. But we will do everything that depends from us to win this war. I don't think the time is playing for Putin. The time is playing for us because we are on our own land, because the truth on our side, because we have a strong will. He just can't do this.
Yesterday in the early afternoon, we saw black smoke across the river. Today we found out what had been hit. A warehouse complex full of foodstuffs. The Russians all out for victory, one onion at a time. 24 hours on, the smoke and dust were still thick and choking. They incinerated cans of beer too, and refrigerators and all the other equipment, and the livelihood of everyone who invested in this business or worked here.
Ну, сейчас мы хотим закрыть офисное здание щитами, хоть чтобы, не попадало дождь там или еще что-то, чтобы не лазили. И на этом все. Что спасти, спасать здесь ничего уже. Остались одни воспоминания.
A mile or so further north, we were taken to a neighbourhood that had been hit around the same time. What can the Russians have been targeting? Why hit here? Hard to compute, if until now, like any teenager, you've been consumed by your own personal acts of rebellion.
У нас повибивало вікна усі, на кухні обвалився, стеля обвалилася. Всі живі, здорові, ніяких травм немає особистих.
Дуже страшно було.
Страшно.
Ukraine's allies are providing some weaponry along with general support, but officials say that's not enough.
Of course, it's good that many people support us, but in reality, we need guns, we need ammo to defend our freedoms.
As for President Putin, who says he's saving these people from their own government,
Якщо б я його побачила, я б просто йому сказала, навіщо ти це робиш? Це з твого боку виглядає як операція по спасінню людей. Люди гибнуть, у людей нема де жити. У людей нема таких грошей, щоб просто взяти і поїхати. Це з твого боку виглядає як спасіння? Я не бачу цього спасіння.
And how much longer must they endure this? The older generation remember the privations of the past. But the young were born into peace and security. Now their country's being destroyed before their very eyes.
Lindsay Hilson reporting. Well, while some civilians have been able to escape two of Ukraine's embattled cities, other attempts at humanitarian corridors have collapsed amidst Russian shelling and acrimony. The two sides have disputed the routes such corridors should take, with Ukraine rejecting Russia's proposals that would see Ukrainians evacuated to Russia and its ally Belarus. Jonathan Rugman joins me now. Can you just begin by explaining why these humanitarian corridors aren't working?
Well, ceasefires are often broken in the business of setting up a humanitarian corridor. It can be broken by either side. But the biggest problem, I think, is that most of the corridors that the Russians have proposed for people to flee are either into Russia or into Belarus, as you can see from these white arrows here. And the Ukrainians who are currently trapped do not want to go to Russia or to Belarus. They consider them the enemy. About 100,000 Ukrainians have fled to Russia, says the UN, but another 1.9 million Ukrainians have voted with their feet and gone the other way, west. And if you look at this second map, which shows where there has been some movement of refugees today, these yellow lines in the north, from Sumy down to Poltava, Irpin to Kiev, there's been limited movement of people there into Ukraine. No movement down from Mariupol because the Russians are still shelling that. That's very strategically important to them. And I think Vladimir Putin doesn't really want these people to come to Russia at all. There is some limited propaganda value in Russia being seen as the motherland, looking after Ukrainians who are fleeing from this so-called neo-Nazi state. But I think ultimately he views Ukrainians the way he views energy, which is something, a spigot that he can turn off and on, and he's quite happy for people to flee to the West.
So what can you say overall about how the war is going, and what do you make of this breaking news out of Poland, that they are going to transfer a load of their MiG fighter jets to a US base in Germany?
We're trapped somewhat in a very pro-Ukrainian narrative because there's a great deal of sympathy for the Ukrainian people. I think the Russians are advancing slowly. We know they've had logistical problems. The CIA estimate that they put out today is that they've lost 2,000 to 4,000 men. I mean, given that they lost 14,000 in Afghanistan, the Soviets did in the 1980s, that's a huge number of people to lose in just a matter of a few days. So I think what the West is trying to do, in the absence of China, which doesn't seem to be doing very much, is to make the cost of victory for Vladimir Putin so high that he reconsiders whether this is worth it and what kind of victory he really wants. The deployment of MiG-29 jets from Poland, there's 27 of them that are NATO compliant, to an airbase in Germany, a US airbase, is part of a deal that the Americans have brokered, whereby the MiG-29s, which the Ukrainians can fly, eventually get transferred to Ukrainian pilots. The Poles get F-16 jets to replace the MiG-29s that they've lost. And so what we're witnessing is, again, part of this calculation for Vladimir Putin changing. The cost is becoming higher and higher for him, not just in sanctions, but in the risk that he gets bogged down in his own Afghanistan, and that his attempts so far to assert air supremacy haven't really worked. He hasn't knocked out anything like enough of Ukraine's air defenses, are now complicated even further by the possibility of MiG-29 jets being flown by Ukrainians, making the task of trying to topple the Zelensky government that much harder.
Jonathan Rugman. Well, the UK and US governments have announced new sanctions on Russian energy. President Biden announced a ban on Russian oil and gas imports, whilst here the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, promised the UK will phase out imports of Russian oil and oil products by the end of the year. Russia's Deputy Prime Minister had previously warned that such a move would be catastrophic for the global economy. Here's what President Biden said earlier.
This is a step that we're taking to inflict further pain on Putin. but there will be cost as well here in the United States. I said I would level with the American people from the beginning. And when I first spoke to this, I said defending freedom is going to cost. It's going to cost us as well in the United States.
Well, joining me now, our economics correspondent, Helia Ebrahimi. Helia.
Well, as Jonathan was saying just earlier, the costs are going to be immense for all sides, really. Things that we didn't think were thinkable just a few days ago are now being deployed as the West pushes ahead with its declaration to decimate Russia's economy. Oil is 60% of all of Russia's exports. It's 14% of the entire economy. So Putin is hugely dependent on it. And don't forget, Krish, energy is currently pretty much the only income that is not sanctioned through the banks. As you said, oil has been banned in the US along with gas imports, and the UK has banned all Russian oil and oil products. So, for example, a fifth of all diesel at UK forecourts actually come from Russia. But it's not just diesel, it's naphtha, it's jet fuel. So it's really huge. The EU, however, while they today said they were going to wean themselves off Russian gas, have not joined the embargo. And here's why. Russia makes up 7% of all of US oil imports. So while there are pockets of industry that are going to be hurt, it's not going to bring the country to a standstill. In the UK, it's 11% of imports. But Europe, the problem is much bigger. For example, Germany, Russian oil imports are at 30%. So that's a huge, big problem. The UK ban, of course, is not immediate. It's not coming into effect until the end of the year. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say about that delay.
We can't move overnight, but we can certainly do it. And we can do it in a way that doesn't disrupt supply, that ensures that we have substitute supplies on stream in an orderly way and in a timetable that won't affect UK business, won't affect UK manufacturing, road haulage, or other parts of our industry, but will punish the regime of Vladimir Putin.
Well, is that true?
Well, of course, it can't be. Economists are already talking about inflation going above 8%, growth in the UK being dragged backwards, basically stagflation, low growth and higher prices. That's horrible for consumers. The Chancellor apparently told Cabinet this is going to hurt consumers, especially low-income families. And the TUC says the government must protect workers and industry. So there's going to be increasing pressure now going forward on the Chancellor for cushioning measures of how sanctions will not impact UK citizens as much as they might.
Thanks, Helia. Well, later in the programme, we will be hearing from people who rely on petrol and diesel to do their jobs. Now, he quoted Shakespeare and echoed Churchill. He was given a standing ovation by MPs. But Ukrainian President Zelensky had a simple message for the UK: give us more support. In a unique address to the Commons via video link from Ukraine, he said he was grateful to Boris Johnson and thankful for help, but wanted the government to increase the pressure of sanctions against Russia and to make sure Ukrainian skies are safe. Here's our political editor, Gary Gibbon.
You now have the floor. President.
President Zelensky then had to wait while MPs applauded him. He gestured to his heart, showing thanks. MPs had spilled into the galleries above the chamber to listen. Then, speaking from a capital city under attack, President Zelensky invoked Churchill and Shakespeare.
The question for us now is to be or not to be. You all know this Shakespearean question. For 13 days, this question could have been asked, but now I can give you a definitive answer. It's definitely yes to be. And I would like to remind you the words that the United Kingdom have already heard, which are important again. We will not give up and we will not lose. We will fight till the end at sea, in the air. We will continue fighting for our land, whatever the cost. We will fight in the forests, in the fields, on the shores, in the streets.
He thanked the government for trying to isolate Russia, but asked for more support.
And I'm very grateful to you, Boris. Please increase the pressure of sanctions against this country, and please recognize this country as a terrorist state. And please make sure that our Ukrainian skies are safe. Best of all to Ukraine and to the United Kingdom.
There was another ovation for President Zelensky at the end, a defiant, clenched fist salute from the president, and then he was gone. The Prime Minister didn't respond to the request to make Ukrainian skies safe. It said the president had moved the hearts of all MPs. Earlier, Boris Johnson hosted the Prime Ministers of the Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia and Poland. He praised their work taking in hundreds of thousands of refugees. The government revealed Britain has now issued only 300 visas for refugees from Ukraine, which added to Tory MPs' anger that refugees reaching Calais had been turned back.
The Home Office must react far more quickly than it's doing and get to the point of hubs of people, get them processed and get them in. This is a disgrace. When the Minister leaves this dispatch box, ask him to go back to the Home Office and tell them to get a grip.
As I've outlined already, we're making quite a number of changes. We met officials this morning to push further ones through.
The Immigration Minister's reply didn't seem to reassure. The government said this temporary office in Calais giving advice to Ukrainian refugees would soon be supplemented by another one that would actually issue the visas they need to get to Britain. It'll be back down the train line in Lille.
Well, as Gary reported, many of those Ukrainians trying to reach the UK have travelled to Calais, despite the lack of visa facilities there. Our reporter Anya Pop is in Calais and joins us from there now. Anya.
Well, yeah, Calais has become symbolic in recent years of the UK's sluggish and sometimes opaque approach to immigration, and Ukrainians are certainly finding that too. Just 500 of the 10,000 Ukrainians who have applied for a visa through the UK scheme have been granted one. Around 600 of those still stuck in limbo are here in Calais, many of them in a hostel just down the road. They came here thinking they could get to the UK, but are still waiting for the UK government to give them the green light to reach their family across the Channel. We spoke with one British man who travelled all the way from the UK to the Polish border with Ukraine to pick up his wife and children. He's travelled back and now he's stuck in Calais with them, waiting for their visas to be processed. We spoke with other Ukrainian refugees in the hostel. Those who haven't yet applied for a visa said that they'll head to Lille tomorrow, the place where the UK government said they're going to set up a new visa centre tomorrow. But they're not even sure what will be there when they get there, whether the visa centre will be open to process their visas. Now Lille is much closer than their previous options. Before, they would have had to go to Paris or Brussels, which is hours away, and there have been complaints that there have been a lack of appointments or sporadic opening hours. But Lille is still 70 miles away, which means more travelling and more disruption for people who have arguably had more than their fair share in these last 2 weeks.
Anya Pop.